The following message is being transmitted at the request of the BNSF Railroad and the Temple Police Department. Unusual activity has been occurring in the BNSF train yard over the past few hours. Employees of the BNSF locomotive facility have been mysteriously collapsing due to an unknown disease. Symptoms of the disease include dizziness, vomiting, rashes, and hallucinations. Over 50 employees have been hospitalized, and the locomotive facility has been closed until further notice. Residents of Temple, take caution to those who have similar symptoms. If you or a family member have similar symptoms, call 911 immediately and seclude yourself from the infected individual. Authorities as well as doctors are baffled as to what this disease is and why it has only infected railroad employees, but authorities speculate it could be a gas leak from the locomotive facility. However, take the necessary precautions to ensure your safety. Repeating, an unknown disease has affected the BNSF locomotive facility. If you or a loved one experiences any of the listed symptoms, call 911 immediately and seclude yourself from the infected individual. Stay tuned for further details. The following message is being transmitted at the request of the Texas Department of Public Health. The disease that was reported in the BNSF locomotive facility has been reported across many train yards across the state, as well as the states of New Mexico, Arizona, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, and Kansas. Over 5,000 employees have been infected with this disease, and over 100 deaths have been reported. In addition, the infected people have been experiencing more symptoms. These symptoms include fever, sweating, chest pain, pupil enlargement, speech impediment, and inability to control limbs. If you live in one of the infected states and experience these symptoms or have family members with similar symptoms, call 911 immediately and seclude yourself from the infected individual. It has also been confirmed that this disease has only infected railroad workers. These include yard masters, engineers, and conductors. It is currently unknown why the disease has only infected railroad workers, but authorities speculate that it could be due to David Sherman. David Sherman, who was responsible for over 300 deaths 4 years ago due to the ghost train incident, has escaped from his prison in central Wyoming and has been reported to be causing havoc across the state. It is not yet known if David Sherman is related to the disease. However, if you see David Sherman, stay away and call 911 immediately. Repeating, an infectious disease has plagued several states across the Southwest. If you experiences the symptoms induced from the disease, or have another family member with the symptoms, call 911 immediately and seclude yourself from the infectious individual. Stay tuned for further details. We interrupt our programming. This is a national emergency. Important instructions will follow. The following message is being transmitted at the request of the Center for Disease Control and the United States government. The disease, now known as rail virus, that infected over 5,000 railroad employees across several southern states, has spread to all states of the contiguous United States. Over 100,000 people have been infected, and around 3,500 people have died. Symptoms of the disease include, but are not limited to, fever, headache, nausea, blood leaking from the nose and ears, hallucinations, and death. Residents of the United States, take caution to this disease. If you or a family member experience any of these symptoms, call 911 immediately and seclude yourself from the infected individual. To avoid contracting this disease, practice proper hygiene methods, such as washing hands and sneezing into a paper towel. It is currently unknown how the disease is transmitted, but the disease has infected non-railroad workers. David Sherman, who was responsible for the ghost train incident 4 years ago, has been confirmed to be the culprit. Unfortunately, David Sherman took his own life in his hideout in Pennsylvania. Traces of the disease were found in his hideout, but no cure has been discovered. The disease itself is a viral disease, with an incubation rate of 30 minutes, and a 97% mortality rate. The disease is believed to be a cross between the rabies virus and 3 unknown viruses. The CDC as well as the U.S. government is currently working on a cure for the disease. At this time, martial law has not been declared, but will be declared if riots break out. There are currently no riots in progress, but if you start one, you will be arrested. A message from the office of the president will be delivered shortly. Repeating, a virus that was first detected in southern states has spread to the rest of the contiguous United States. If you or a loved one has been infected with the disease, call 911 immediately and seclude yourself from the infected individual. This message will repeat in 1 minute. The following message has been transmitted by the request of the U.S. government. The situation involving the disease known as rail virus has dramatically worsened. As of this time, over 300,000 people have been infected, and over 20,000 people have died. The CDC recently released some disturbing news concerning the disease. The disease has mutated, and is now airborne. Currently, all countries in North America have been infected, as well as Argentina. All flights inbound and outbound of the U.S. have been canceled, and the borders with Mexico and Canada have been closed. The states of Alaska and Hawaii have also been infected with the disease. In addition, the disease is capable of infecting plants and other animals. Currently, there is no way to control the situation, and there is currently no cure for the disease. However, the CDC has been developing a cure. Unfortunately, there has been no progress as of yet. Due to the current situation, martial law has been implemented to all states. The president will be discussing specifics of martial law shortly. Stay tuned for a message from the president.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, as you may know, our world is currently being plagued by a disease of epic proportions. Currently, over 350,000 people have been infected, and over 20,000 people have died. Unfortunately, the disease has mutated and is now airborne. Additionally, because of the outbreak, several riots had broken out in the cities of Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and Portland. My duty to ensure the safety of the American people is great, and because of the danger Americans are currently putting on each other, I have no choice but to implement martial law, which is effective immediately. As of today, and until further notice, no person is allowed to leave their homes between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., with the exceptions of government workers who are currently working to find a cure for the disease. When I conclude my speech, martial law will be in effect. The time right now is 10:09 Eastern Time. All citizens of the Eastern Time Zone, return to your homes immediately, as martial law is currently in effect. I'm also aware of your concern as to how this disease was developed, and I have the answer. As your president, I have a duty to inform of any danger, and the people who created these dangers. The creator of this disease has been confirmed to be 77-year-old David Sherman. This man was responsible for an outrageous ghost train incident 4 years ago. This man, however, was a coward and took his own life without creating a cure for the disease. I can assure you as your president, the CDC, as well as other intelligent workers, are currently in development of a cure for the disease. I have just been informed by the officials at the CDC that a major breakthrough was discovered and a cure could be developed in the next month. However, during this time, do not act in any manner that could possibly get others infected. As far for the motive for David Sherman's actions, I think I have an answer. A diary was found in Sherman's hideout, and has been the major breakthrough the country was waiting for, as it contained vital information to develop a cure. However, a DVD was discovered in his room, and contains the answer we have all been waiting for. However, the DVD in question has not been monetized, so viewer discretion is advised.
If you are watching this, then I am dead, and probably some of you have also perished. My name is David Sherman. This is my confession. On March 1st, 1957, the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railroad was purchased by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. This was the beginning of the supermergers that would take place over the next half-century. My position on the Dixie Line was the most fantastic I have ever discovered. The merger hit me like a mother losing her child. However, I knew all good things must come to an end, and accepted it. What followed was a series of bad luck in my case. I found work at the Virginian Railroad, which was a second home for me, as it operated much like the Dixie Line. Just a year and a half later, that railroad would be swallowed by the Norfolk and Western Railroad. I was laid off for a second time, and again struggled to find work. If you are watching this, then I am dead, and probably some of you have also perished. My name is David Sherman. This is my confession. On March 1st, 1957, the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railroad was purchased by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. This was the beginning of the supermergers that would take place over the next half-century. My position on the Dixie Line was the most fantastic I have ever discovered. The merger hit me like a mother losing her child. However, I knew all good things must come to an end, and accepted it. What followed was a series of bad luck in my case. I found work at the Virginian Railroad, which was a second home for me, as it operated much like the Dixie Line. Just a year and a half later, that railroad would be swallowed by the Norfolk and Western Railroad. I was laid off for a second time, and again struggled to find work. I found work on the Erie Railroad, which was undoubtedly a mistake from the beginning, as the railroad merged with the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western on October 17, 1960. The new railroad formed was the Erie-Lackawanna, which was a more stable railroad, but would fail. I jumped through several failed railroads throughout the 60s and early 70s. I worked on the Jersey Central, the Pennsylvania, New York Central, Lehigh Valley, Reading, Lehigh and Hudson River, Lehigh and New England, New Haven, and eventually back to Erie-Lackawanna. Hurricane Agnes of 1972 destroyed my career, and I was laid off for the third time. I managed to find odd jobs until April 1, 1976, when the Consolidated Rail Corporation was formed. If I would have known what joke that was, I would have kept my current job. The first couple of years were terrible, but the effects of that term's presidential policies in the late 70s mirrored the steel industry, which was already destroyed. I was laid off for the fourth and final time in 1980. I then set out to find the culprits who destroyed many lives. I conducted a series of small bank robberies throughout 1981 and had collected upwards of $400,000. In 1984, I found work on the Union Pacific, a longtime favorite of mine, until I discovered its dirty secrets. As a result of myself being secluded, I was unaware that the Union Pacific purchased the Missouri Pacific and the Western Pacific in 1982. I, however, looked past this as the Western Pacific was a dying railroad, and the Missouri Pacific let UP on their front door. However, before I continue, some of the more attentive members of my audience have probably figured out my age. I dropped out of high school in 1956, after both of my parents died. I found work on the railroad in late 1956, when I was 17. I lied about my age, and my bulky size helped. I was found out in 1970, but at that time nobody cared, as I was 28 years old, and had well over 10 years tenure. Continuing with my confession, I only wished to work for a strong railroad that treated its customers with respect. In 1989, I found work on the Kansas City Southern, and continued to work there until I retired in March 2018 as a yard master. My time was well earned, and I knew I had left a strong railroad. That is until January 18th of 2019, when Kansas City Southern announced its move to implement policies of precision railroading. I had known about precision railroading for a long time, as CSX became a joke by implementing the system. However, I didn't know stupidity could be a disease. What followed was a system adapted into a company that would have tragic consequences. The railroads of Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern adopted the system months prior, leaving BNSF as the only railroad left. However, on April 1, 2019, Matthew Rose retired from his position. What followed is what would cause the Second Great Depression of America. Executives of the other railroads that adopted Hunter Harrison's policies quickly fled to BNSF. They immediately adopted a system similar in that of CSX in 2017. Over 4,000 employees were laid off, 1,000 locomotives scrapped, and over 10,000 pieces of rolling stock turned into cheap patio furniture. The railroads focused its priorities on the shareholders, and not the customers. Safety wasn't at all enforced, and many employees were murdered. In the winter months of Minnesota, employees suffered frostbite and pneumonia. Track maintenance was often postponed, which led to countless derailments. One of the aspects of precision railroading was faster running times for trains. Engineers were forced to run trains at over 70 miles per hour on track that couldn't handle speeds of 30. Over 1,000 employees died because of this. However, the final blow would happen in March of 2020. I should probably mention now that I was told to be 77 years old. I am actually 82 years old, but I assume that people think I'm 77 because of my fake birth certificate. Myself in my aging condition witnessed the scrapping of all locomotives on all Class 1 railroads built before 1990. What resulted was tragedy. In just 1 month, General Electric and Progressive Rail were receiving countless orders of locomotives. Railroads became so desperate, they fled to other worldwide locomotive manufacturers. The locomotives created for the railroads were widely inefficient. The locomotives caught fire regularly due to overuse, which was another policy of precision railroading, allowing heavy trains to be run with insufficient horsepower. The current American locomotive companies shut down operations after strikes were formed due to employees being overworked, sometimes up to 20-hour shifts, with cuts in the salary, due to the locomotive manufacturers hiring too many employees in a short period of time. Progressive Rail failed. General Electric shut down its locomotive operations, and all foreign locomotives were not allowed to be run on American rails, due to safety concerns. Railroads became unable to run trains, and continued to make unorthodox cuts. In December of 2020, America fell into a depression unlike any other. And national emergency was called to determine the culprit of the situation. This is where I learned the true scale of precision railroading. All industrial companies adopted similar standards, with some going a step further to ensure others' safety. Employees were forced to work for another to ensure their safety as well as their own, which often led to betrayal. The unemployment rate rose to 16% at the beginning of the year.
This is where I took action. I took control of a Union Pacific freight train in Texas and caused it to derail. I invented a form of virtual reality that could make contact with our world. Of course, I am talking about the ghost train incident. I have in fact gone crazy, and I admit it. But I'm not the only criminal. The people who work less for more are the culprits. The people who force others to contribute to their needs are the culprits. The businessmen who willingly endanger people's safety to save a buck are the culprits. The creation of the Union Party was the start. During the 50s and 60s, the Union demanded higher wages and insurance, which led to the closure of many steel and automobile facilities. The Pennsylvania and New York Central Railroads were forced to pay for the St. Lawrence Seaway, which led to their death, and the actions of a certain president in the late 70s ensured the destruction of these facilities forever. In the 90s, it became too expensive to run trains efficiently. It became so bad, CSX, who was a major coal hauler, started to make cuts, and after seeing what an apparent resounding success it was, other railroads followed suit. The result of the Union Party's selfishness resulted in businessmen to act as they did to gain. The man who steals his fortune is a criminal. The man who builds up a reputation with his customers and employees is the respectable man. I created a disease that would only infect railroad workers to destroy what was already damaged beyond repair. The disease can only infect railroad workers, as all workers were required to get a special shot to protect the workers from the atmosphere of the train yards. I infected those tubes, and I am the man responsible for the death of over thousands of people. The virus in itself isn't a virus at all, but more like an advanced form of the virus. When infected, a man cannot transmit the disease by any means as it is too weak to do so, but focuses on the host. I know none of these employees deserve to die, but action needed to be taken. I am sorry. As of this moment, I read in the newspaper that the first non-railroad employee got infected. I messed up somewhere. The disease will become airborne. However, there is a way to stop it. I cannot disclose this information. However, I made a series of clues to find the only cure to the disease. If you want to slow down the disease, drink a cup of tomato juice every day. This will significantly decrease your chances of getting infected. I should also note that any vaccine will not work. Stop developing them now. Distribute tomato juice immediately. As for the clue, here it is. The man who fights for freedom of our nation is our father. The man who fights for freedom of our rights is our savior. The man who fights for your freedom is our protector. Find these clues and you will be saved. Thank you. Godspeed. Good night.
This concludes operations of the emergency alert system. Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
Oh.